Welcome to the beginning of our conclusions on Rus. If you enjoy this share, rather than asking you to subscribe or give the podcast a 5-star rating, I would simply tell you to tell someone else about it. This week we look at textual and literary patterns in Megillat Ruth, including a preponderance of vavs, a parallel to yetziat mitzrayim, the comparisons to the story of Rebbi Meir and his teacher Acher, and we attempt to make sense of the statement from Chazal that converts are difficult for the Jewish people like a tzaraat lesion. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, but first we will start with two quotes. The first one is from Christopher Rolland and Mark Corner in Liberating Exegesis. The quote is as follows: "The text has the capacity to answer back, and in the process of interpretation, the interpreters are themselves interpreted." The second is from Jorge Luis Borges. "Even for the same reader, the same book changes for the change. We are the river of Heraclitus, who said that the man of yesterday is not the man of today, who will not be the man of tomorrow. We change incessantly, and each reading of a book, each rereading, each memory of that rereading reinvents the text. The text, too, is the changing river of Heraclitus." Okay.
Good quotes today.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is just explore a number of different ideas that I think we can learn from this Megillah.
Based on the quote that anything that we say here can and will be used against us in a psychological profile.
Something like that. The first is going to be based on a very challenging statement from Chazal. Chazal make the following statement in Nida 13b. Kashin gerin li Yisrael kasapachas. Is anyone familiar with this quote? Have you heard this before?
Yeah. Converts are as tough for the Jewish people as, like, what is it, a boil?
Sapachas is a tzaraat lesion.
Right, it's a tzaraat like lesion, right?
Yeah. So what could that possibly mean? That converts are difficult for the Jewish people like tzaraat.
So the common interpretation is the ger does everything with gusto and with, a fresh pair of eyes and with enthusiasm. And for people who have fallen into the trap of mitzvah anashim lumada, it can be an embarrassing comparison.
Okay.
That's the one that I hear the most commonly.
Okay. So that's fair. The only response I would have to that is then you could change out tzaraas for anything.
Yeah.
Right? Anything negative.
Right.
If we take the comparison to tzaraas seriously, then we'd have to find some sort of overlap between. You'd have to take the two concepts, right? The concept of convert and the concept of tzaraas, and try to figure out where's the overlap where they fit together in a way that teaches us something meaningful. Right? Does that make sense?
The tzaraat person has to separate from Klaishville, right?
Oh, so you already got to the answer before I was going to give you some false roads to go down first, right? Tzaraas we know comes from lashon hara, right? Chazal tell us. So is there any overlap between the concept of lashon hara and ger? No. Okay, so you can do that for everything. Skin changing, whatever. But then you'll eventually get to where Shimi got to immediately, which is part and parcel of what the Mitzorah has to do is badad yeshev chutz lamachana, right? They have to leave the camp. And why would you say that maps to a ger?
Again, just for a story, so that even though he's trying to come into a kahila, he's really always going to be separate, meaning whether it's from
a lot of loneliness.
Yeah, I'm saying from a non-Yerusha standpoint, from a non-accepting standpoint,
from a cultural, yeah.
He's always the ger.
He's always okay. So that's very interesting. Why is that hard for the Jewish people?
Because that does go against our nature of wanting to accept. I mean, we're not a cold nation by nature.
We're not. You're saying we don't normally we do want to accept people, except we don't accept the ger.
Very difficult to accept the ger, and that's why the Torah sets out 3 times in the Torah that you have to accept the ger.
What does that mean? You have to accept the ger?
It's a special mitzvah to accept the ger, and then Torah says
You have to treat the ger kindly. This,
Right.
which is sort of in conflict with the statement. The statement from Chazal is that the gerim are hard for Yisrael, but
that's exactly why the Torah. If it was easy, they don't have to say it. They don't have to say you have to breathe. They only say things that are difficult. And this is no less difficult to have to say it 3 times.
Did we have any problems accepting Rus or Ovadia or Yisro or any of the converts that are famous in the Torah?
Some people probably did, yeah.
Some people probably did.
We don't hear about those struggles.
Ploni Almoni seems like he didn't really accept Rus right away, even though maybe Boaz did.
I mean, the Gemara talks about a lot of that stuff.
Talks about,
like the aspersions cast on David HaMelech because of his yichus, which implies by extension that, like, hey, there are people who are, like, probably overtly hostile.
So that's interesting. I think that's more because of the Moabite connection than of the convert connection.
Right.
It's also a slap in the face to the Jews with converts.
Why?
Because converts come to a religion, to our religion, and they say how wonderful it is, and we take it for granted.
Oh, so that's very interesting. That they want to be here, and they make us realize how much we're taking for granted.
They make us look bad.
That's interesting. I'll offer you one other perspective, which is, I guess, a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek. If you view the whole process of tzaraat as stemming from lashon hara, then I think you can view the whole thing symbolically. Meaning, normally, Jewish people are supposed to feel like one people, right? Mm-hmm. If you feel that way, then it's almost impossible for you to say lashon hara. You're not going to say lashon hara about your spouse, about yourself. You're going to talk about someone who is other, right? Who is disconnected from you, and therefore you have that space to feel comfortable to talk about them in a way that is lashon hara. When that happens, tzaraat is a process, right? It doesn't start immediately on the skin. It starts first in the home, then on the clothes, then on the person, and that's
only if we're zocha for it.
If we're zocha for it, but that process is there to delineate to the person that first you've let tzaraat into your home, right? You're willing to view another part of Klal Yisrael as other than you, so you've welcomed that approach into your home, and then if you continue, you've not only welcomed it to your home, it's now how you express yourself. It's on your clothes. It's how you conduct yourself to others. It's readily apparent to other people. And then if you continue, you've integrated it into your person. It's part of who you are. It's in your skin, right? The remedy for that is chutz l'machane, badad yeshev. Go out, leave the people. Right now, instead of you feeling separate from that person, you are separate from Klal Yisrael.
They're separate from you.
They're separate from you, but you're separate from all of Klal Yisrael now. And then you have to reintegrate. And that reintegration comes with a new perspective. That's the whole point, right? If you continue to be a lashon hara person, then you learn nothing.
Get better.
Right. You have to adopt a new perspective, and then you have to bring that new perspective back to the Jewish people and reintegrate. A ger has that new perspective by definition, and what is hard for the Jewish people is to integrate that outsider's perspective, right? They're looking, like you said, they're coming to Yiddishkeit in a way that is different than the people who are in Yiddishkeit, and you, the Jewish people, have to integrate that. That integration of an outside perspective is challenging. That's what Yisro brought, right? It's this week's Parsha. Yisro shows up and he sees what Moshe is doing, and he's like, you've got this all wrong. Let me give you a different perspective, right? That is the Kashin Gerin Yisrael Kasapachas, that specifically a tzaraat kind of approach is teaching you that there is this need, and it's a hard thing, but it's a necessary thing because it allows the Jewish people to broaden their total perspective. Now you've got something that's outside of what is the norm, or what is your comfort zone. Does that make sense? Does that resonate for people?
You brought it up because of this week's parsha?
Some of it was this week's parsha, yes.
I want to.
It doesn't answer the question.
I'm still interested in.
It doesn't.
The sneak preview from last time about how, are we getting to the chosenness idea, the self-chosenness?
So we're going to get to that. This is laying the foundation for some of that.
Okay.
It doesn't answer your question, which is, barring Ruth, where in the Torah does it say that gerim are discriminated against, other than the fact that it says 3 times where are examples of it?
That's what I'm saying. They don't have to be discriminated against. It's speaking more conceptually that to a unified people who have a specific approach
Why
to
does it
certain.
have to say it 3 times?
Say what? I'm not following where it says 3 times.
There's 3 separate times when the Torah sets out that you're not supposed to discriminate against the ger.
There's
like
more times than that.
Times. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of times
3 times
that
I think that you're supposed to love the ger. I think it says like 32 times that you're not supposed to mess with the ger.
I mean, the other things.
So
are
why?
just
Well, so we'll get back to that in a minute, because I'm going to argue to you in a minute that almost none or maybe all of those statements don't refer to a convert. Okay. Anyone who wants to crack open the Megillat Ruth, we'll do an attempt at a magic trick. Hopefully this will work. I want you to
Are we doing the Goral Hagra?
Sort of, but it's rigged. Please open up to any pasuk. Don't tell me which pasuk in Megillat Ruth, and I will tell you what letter the pasuk starts with. Ready? You have a pasuk?
I have the pasuk.
Does it start with a vav?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I want you to now find any other pasuk. There's right. Find any other pasuk in Megillat Ruth. Don't tell me what it starts with. Does it start with a vav?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're going to do one more trick.
With the Queen of Hearts.
I want you to go to Parshas Vayeshev.
Does it start with the pasuk vav?
Verification.
With the letter vav.
Okay, I'm gonna pick this one.
I'm going to go with Vav.
Yashav Elihuda.
I want you to pick another pasuk in Parshas Vayeshev.
Yes.
Choose one without a vav.
The first two did.
Okay.
Third one, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So the point of all of this is that in Megillat Ruth, every single pasuk except for 8 starts with the letter Vav.
You couldn't choose one of the 8.
This is.
How do we not know
This.
okay.
How did you not know? Oh, okay. One more magic trick. Open up.
Right, it's like his one big run-on sentence. So one time I went to this place and there was a bunch of guys there, and there was a bunch of like really weird items on the menu, and I saw some people from high school there, and I did, that's really weird.
So it's like a statistical anomaly. It's true. There's 22 letters in the Aleph Beis. It doesn't mean that there's equal distribution. There's definitely statistically more psukim in general that start with a vav than most other letters. But in any given parsha, you would not have a 91% vav preponderance. Thank you.
All the major verbs.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, for sure. But you get a lot of olives. You get
Only Ruth and Vayeshev probably.
Right. So only Rus and Vayeshev and 2 others that I've found so far. The first is Bereshis. Believe it or not, this is something I don't think we covered in the Bereshis here. We did talk about how the first 4 psukim of Parak Bet are really part of Parak Aleph.
Right.
Right. So the clearest way you can see them, there's a couple other Bereshis svarim over there for you to see that. 1 second. Is that every single pasuk in the first parak of Bereshis starts with a vav, with the exception of Bereshis bara Elokim, and even that pasuk, the Ramban really holds that it should say Vayomer Hashem el Moshe Bereshis bara Elokim. Okay, but after the first pasuk in Bereshis, every other pasuk starts with a vav, including the first 4 psukim in Parak Bet, and then you get Eila Tolo Shemayim Ba'aretz. So the vavs start at the beginning and go all the way through the second parak, at least the first 4 psukim, which are the ones that we were arguing are part of the first parak. But Bereshis is also Parshas Bereshis and Parsha Shmos. We're going to try to see how Parsha Shmos has what to do with Rus, hopefully momentarily, but are a few of the other parshios that have a large preponderance of the letter vav. Why does Megillat Ruth have such a high number of vavs, and why not go the whole way? Why are there 8 psukim that don't start with vav? Any guesses?
Well, I mean, if you want to take, like, if you're building a building, okay, each part of the construction process, from the erection of the scaffolding to the installation of the electrical wires to the plumbing, it's all really one big thing. It's one project. So for Hashem to create the universe, okay, I mean, I feel like the narrative is telling us, hey, all these things are connected into one unified whole.
Then why not go the whole way and have
because there are elements that I guess stand out or are disparate from that process that, like, if you build a building, okay, then there are certain things that can give that building its character but aren't intrinsic to the building itself. Like, so for example, you can have an empty space and you can use it as an apartment, or you could use it as a psychiatrist's office. So, that reveals stuff about me, right? Or it could be like, a department store or whatever. And that's not intrinsic to the building itself, but it gives the building a certain degree of flavor. That could be not necessarily connected in the same intimate way, but still informs us about the building.
Interesting. I like that. That's a very interesting approach. That
Thank you.
The Megillah is an edifice that is trying to show unity.
Yes.
Are you seeing a therapist?
I probably should.
Vav, we know, is
If he's not, he should be.
Yes.
And it's important to be able to express your feelings.
there you go. Vav, we know, is referred to as the Vav HaChibur.
Yes.
Right? It signifies connection.
Right.
It's also the fact that there's 8. 8 is symbolic, also in certain capacity as chibur, because 8 represents bris milah and connection in other ways.
Like 8 represents really transcendence, right?
So 8 for us is gonna. I don't think we brought it up when we were talking about Esav last week. How many kings does Esav have?
4.
8?
So no, yes.
8.
Yes. So there we didn't, and we should have covered this last week. Okay. So in where is it? Bereshis, what is
That's
it? 35?
not the chiefs. That's not like Aluf Teman.
No. So it's in that same parsha, Bereshis 36.
Right.
Can
This
you
is like
open Bereshis 36?
Becher and like Bella or something like that.
Yes. So we spoke last week about the difference between Esav and David, but I don't think we clarified very well that
Esav and David?
yes. The similarities and the differences in terms of both being red and being involved in murder and bloodshed. But what we didn't, I don't think we got to all the symbolism. Besides the number of brothers that David has and everything else, if you have Bereshis 36, 31...
He's the 8th, right? He has 7 brothers.
Correct. So we're going to get a list now of the kings that ruled in Edom before there was a king in Yisrael.
David the 7th?
No, he was number
I believe
8.
he was the 8th.
Yeah.
7th.
I believe.
Yeah.
We can double check and confirm. And you're about to get a list of 8 kings. Right. So that number 8 is very the symbolism of 8 is very connected to Esav. He also, I don't know how far down the rabbit hole we want to go. He marries the daughters of Chet, right? Like literally the letter Chet is how, like the Benot Chet. That's where we get Marasa Machpelah from. Okay, we'll leave that, but you can take my word for it.
That's where we get Martha Machpelah.
From Ephron and the Bnei Chet.
Yep, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Died.
So okay, so did we explain why Vayeshev has the same preponderance of vavs? What story that is very germane to Megillat Ruth is in Parshas Vayeshev? Yehuda and Tamar, right? So the same exact textual phenomenon that you have in Parshas Vayeshev,
The shady union.
The shady union, but the same over reliance on vavs across the board, that is mirrored in Megillat Ruth. Okay.
Incidentally,
Yes.
did I ever tell you the thing about that I asked the Kadesha? Did I ever tell you this?
No.
It always
Prostitute?
bothered me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Yehuda thinks that Tamar is a lady of ill repute. He thinks she's a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
I asked for many years, like, why does the word for prostitute sound like the word for holiness? And I never got a good answer until like a couple of months ago.
Okay.
I asked Rick Gedalia Gerfine,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave me a brilliant answer. He said, the word kadosh means set aside, right? And he says that essentially the word for prostitute is kadesha, so it's basically got the letters of kadosh without the vav hachibor.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make something kadosh, you're setting it aside to create a connection. So ultimately, like when you make something hektish or you marry a woman, you're saying you're kadosh to me, you're special to me because I want to be connected to you.
Mm-hmm.
When you make a dedication to the Beis Hamikdash, you're saying I want to connect to Hashem. A kadesha is somebody who is set aside in the lowest way possible. You want something from her, but you don't ultimately want a connection, so it's missing a vav.
Oh.
So like you're there for it's the polar opposite of what holiness is, because it's ultimately the epitome of a transactional relationship, no pun intended.
Right.
But like it's purely there's literally no strings attached. It's I give you the money, you give me the thing that I want, and then we never have to see each other again.
Right.
And that's why the Torah calls it that, because ultimately it's drawing a parallel between those two concepts. That prostitution is ultimately
The
emptiness. It's the absence of connection.
Okay.
So
thank you.
But the fact that there's vavs everywhere in the Yehuda and Tamar story, like, indicates, like, I think that I thought it was relevant to mention.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, the next pattern I'd like us to explore a little bit. We mentioned Parsha Shmos, so I want to try to look at the Megillah overall, symbolically, as following the pattern of Yetziat Mitzrayim. And if I say that to you, I'm sure some things will already start to percolate, but let me run through a couple and get us started, and then feel free to call out any parallels that you see. But if we look at Naomi and her family as the Jews who were in the land of Canaan or Eretz Yisrael, and there's a famine, so they leave to go to the non-Jewish land where they live for a significant amount of time. The men die, and only when there is a sign that God has shown favor are they going to now decide to leave. When they decide to leave, so non-Jews come along with the Jews who've decided to leave. There is conversion that's going on, right? You have either the Jewish people really become a nation at Har Sinai. You have Rus going through her conversion process, possibly when she's following Naomi. You have some people who originally left decide to go back. They don't want to be a part of the journey, and that is Orpah returning back to Moab. So the people who identify these kinds of patterns are not just Jewish authors. Christian authors look at this in a similar way, but they view the coming to Beis Lechem as the Jewish people entering Eretz Yisrael. I would disagree with that and view Rus and Naomi coming to Beis Lechem as still part of the traveling in the Midbar, specifically when the Jewish people reach a place where there are bitter waters. Right? Are we familiar with this story? Mm-hmm. The Jewish people complain, which is Naomi complaining. And what is the name of the place with the bitter waters?
Mara.
What is Naomi's name after she complains? Mara. Right? Okay. Now, we'll call it Rus and Naomi as the Jewish people. They encounter Boaz. So essentially, Boaz is a stand-in for God. You have Rus, when she meets Boaz, is like Moshe when he comes to the snah, right? He's bowing down. He's saying, "I'm not worthy for this interaction. Why are you choosing me?" Right?
It's a little bit on the stretch side.
Okay, fair. The goal from Rus and Naomi's perspective is.
I can see it. I what I see it is I could see Christians going with this very much so, because you've got the Christ figure there, but I don't see this as a Jewish thing. I think
Why?
there's a Christ figure there.
Why is who's the Christ figure?
The persecuted one.
Oh, you're saying Rus as being persecuted because she's the outsider?
She's the outsider. She's persecuted. Therefore, she's persecuted.
But she doesn't complain about being persecuted.
Right, and she goes down and she's persecuted, and she's the I guess the mother. I mean, you could put all this Christian theology in there.
Yeah,
I see it more as a Christian theology
and
than a Jewish
that
theology.
they definitely do.
I know this stuff. So the Jesus story is that he's a persecuted guy or something? What?
Whatever.
That's why he got strung up in the cross?
He dies for the sins of the people.
Yeah.
Right. So they get a lot of that from
us.
Yeshayahu. There's was the 56th chapter is called the Suffering Servant.
53rd, no?
53rd.
Yeah.
53rd.
Yeah, whatever.
Rus is brought, as Boaz says, he's brought tachat knafav, right? That's the Jewish people coming tachat kanfei hashchina. And then eventually Rus and Boaz get married, have a child, and build a bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael. The name of that child is Oved, right?
Or
The Jewish people build a mishkan where you perform the avoda, right? So you can feel free to take this and run with it.
do Jewish goes? I mean, I clearly see Christians going with this thought process. Do you see this?
Yeah, in like Jewish studies scholarship, they mention a lot of these parallels.
Okay, see more Christian.
I think it's interesting to consider. I think there's some are maybe more compelling than others. Another parallel I'd like to outline for you is sort of in reverse, where Chazal take the story that we just read and they map it to a story that happened in their times. So are we all familiar, and I guess we'll wrap up with this one, are we all familiar with someone named Elisha ben Avuya?
Yeah.
Better known as Acher, right? The story of the four people who went into Pardes. Who would like to give us a quick synopsis of what happened?
They enter this mystical state. One dies, one goes crazy, one becomes a heretic, and one enters and exits in peace.
Why did he become a heretic?
Because he saw something that he could not reconcile. He saw he basically saw Metatron sitting or something like that, and there's no way that that's supposed to be possible, and he couldn't wrap his head around it, and so he went off the path.
Okay, so the next series after Rus is not going to cover this as extensively, but the one after that, I'd like to do Yechezkel. So when we get to the Merkava, I'd like to get into this a little bit more in depth. But
Good luck. That's hard.
We're gonna have some fun. Okay, here's the story. Traveling on the road together is someone who is admittedly not in God's good graces, and there's a devoted follower. We'll call the first one the shunned. Okay, so shunned tells the follower that the follower has to go back, and the follower insists that no, the two of them should go together. Shun demurs and explains to the follower that the situation is hopeless. They discuss the principle of Tchum Shabbos, and at some point, Shun assumes a new name. As our story continues, we discover that the follower ensures that Shun is not forever completely lost. What story did I just tell you?
Right. Either one.
What do you mean, either one?
Ruth or Naomi, or Elisha ben Avuya and Rebbi Meir.
So that's exactly right. So the Gemara, I'll read to you the Gemara in Chagiga. Tana Rabbanan. Ma'isa be'acher shahaya rochev al hasus b'Shabbos. So Acher is traveling on a horse on Shabbos, which is in violation of Why is it a violation of Shabbos?
He said,
You might rip.
It's a violation of a durabanan, right?
You might rip
off a branch to whip the horse. Very good. Okay, Vahaya Rebbi Meir Mahalach Acharav, and Rebbi Meir is walking behind him, Lilmod Torah Mipiv, to learn Torah from him. Why? This is not the Gemara talks about it, but I'll ask it outside. Why is Rebbi Meir allowed to learn Torah from Elisha ben Avuya?
Because he can take the wheat and discard the chaff.
Nice. Sorry.
Okay.
Amar, isn't that the lesion that they use?
There's actually two different ones. One is take the inside of the rimon, take the seeds, and leave the peel. Yes, excellent. We're gonna cover both of them. Please God. Amar lo. He says so. Acher says to Rebbi Meir, Meir choser lacharecha, go back, right? Just like Naomi said to Ruras, shuv. Shekvar shi'arti bi'ikvei susi, I already measured the steps of my horse, ad kan tchum Shabbos. We've now reached the tchum Shabbos. So if you remember, Rus and Ami are having their conversation. Part of that conversation was Basher telechi elech, where you go, I go. So Chazal darshan from there that she explained, well, there's tchum Shabbos. So Rus said, I will keep tchum Shabbos, where you go up until the tchum, that's where I will go. Amar lo afata choserbach. So Rebbi Meir, is quick with the punning of the language, and he says, "You're right. I should return. You should also return," meaning do teshuvah. Amar lo v'lo kvar amarti lo kvar shamati ma'achorei hapargud. Didn't I tell you that I heard from behind the celestial curtain? Shuvi banim shuvim. The pasuk says, "Return, my sons." Chutz mi acher, except for acher, he's not welcome back. Ki noch nafshe. To Acher. Now, after I'm skipping part of the Gemara over here, but after Acher passes away, Amri, they said to Rebbi Meir, Lo meidan. I'm sorry, they said in Shamayim, Lo meidan l'daine v'lo la'alma da'asi leise. We can't judge him because he all of his Torah learning, but he also can't come into the Olam ha'emes because he sinned. Lo meidan daine mishum da'asik ba'oraisa v'lo la'alma da'asi leise mishum da'chata. Right, that's what I just said. So Amar Rebbi Meir mutav d'lidaine v'leis la'alma da'aseh. It's better that he should be judged and not make it into the olam ha'emes. Why? Masai amus va'aleh ashan mikivro. So Rebbi Meir says it's better he should be judged and not come to the world to come.
I'm going to throw him into Gehenna. His grave is going to start smoking.
No. Masai amus va'aleh ashan mikivro.
Memory, Charles.
Yeah.
Right, so a pillar of smoke comes out from the grave of Elisha ben Abuya, indicating that he's not upstairs, he's downstairs. Ki nach nafshe de Rebbi Meir, but when Rebbi Meir passes away, solik kutra mikivrei de acher. Suddenly, that pillar of smoke is gone, indicating that Rebbi Meir was able to pull acher out of Gehenna and head up to Shamayim. Okay, so what is? It seems to me that there are patterns from the Rus and Naomi story that are being applied to Acher and Rebbi Meir. What could we learn from that, from the Gemara's intent in doing something like that?
Well, there's got to be a connection.
Okay.
Clearly.
What?
That you could do tshuva.
You can do teshuvah, so that's super helpful, right? That was part of.
You can do tshuva in the face of rejection.
No, you could do tshuva even from hell.
Right. Sure.
Oh, I like that. Right. It wasn't. You're saying it wasn't just Rebbi Meir in the zchus of Rebbi Meir that Acher stopped roasting.
Even in hell.
Okay.
Right. But I mean, ultimately, Naomi is discouraging Ruth. Like, get out of here. Like, so. And Ruth is like, no, I'm coming with you. And, Acher is like, it's too late for me. And Rebbi Meir is like, no, you need to barrel through this. Like, even in the face of rejection, you need to soldier on.
Okay, I like that a lot. And I think that's part of what Naomi comes to learn from Rus. Meaning, Naomi shows up at Beis Lechem, and she's given up all hope. Call me Mara. God is, we talked about this a little bit, but she's basically like Eov, right? God has embittered me. I give up on the whole situation. And Rus, and in our other story, Rebbi Meir is saying there is no giving up. I won't let you give up.
Right.
Right. And it doesn't matter that you heard from God Himself.
Right.
You can believe either as Naomi, you can believe that this is God saying I'm not interested in you, or as Acher, you could have actually literally heard God say I'm not interested.
Say get out of here.
I don't, and the response to that has to be I don't care. I don't care. I will not allow a severing of the relationship. Rebbi Meir is teaching Acher, it doesn't matter what God says, you still have a relationship with him. You might feel like you're suffering, you might feel like you are cast away, you might feel like it's all over, you still have a relationship with him. You can always be choser. And I think that's what Rus gives to Naomi, is that hope that it's not over, there's still a relationship to be had. And I think that's a powerful thing to consider for ourselves, or for when we see people who are despairing and going through challenging times, that it doesn't matter even if you got a clear message from God that he's not interested, there's still a relationship. And I think we can end on that and pick up Please God next week.